How you doing, folks? Well, in today's video I am going to be changing the steering box on this 1960s Volkswagen Beetle. Let's get stuck in. Okay, so let's have a look at the situation as it stands. That is the amount of play there is in the steering before anything happens at the wheels. That is not an acceptable situation. I know they can be a little bit wayward at times, but definitely not that bad. Now, what is it that causes that? Let's have a look. Volkswagen Beetles feature a steering system called the steering box, so there's no rack and pinion in this. Basically what happens is the steering column comes down to a gearbox, which is down here in the car, which is just forward of the fuel tank, and that translates the rotating movement to left and right movement on a lever arm. Now, the way I know that the steering box is bunched in this car is simply down to this. The adjustment screw in the centre is wound all the way in, and that is the reason why I know that this steering box is wrecked, okay? So what we need to do is we need to replace this, and I have a replacement part for it. There is a certain amount of adjustments that can be made in steering boxes, but when you're down to that point where the screw in the centre of there's a lock nut with a screw just there, when that's wound all the way in, you're at nothing. You're never going to get an adjustment, and what's happening is you're just basically gronching the gears inside it. So that's where our problem lies. So what's involved in changing it? Well, the first thing we need to do is we need to take out the petrol tank. So let's get stuck in and do that. Okay, so here we are. Here's the steering column shaft coming down into a coupling here, and straight away we can see that somebody has already been here before us, which is actually great because it means that the coupling has already been replaced, and so have the track rods by the looks of things as well, and the track rod ends are all looking very fresh. So that basically isolates the problem to exactly what I suspected, which is the steering box. So now the first thing we need to do is we need to disconnect the steering coupling, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to jack up the front of the car and I'm going to put it up on a set of axle stands so that we can get access to the underside as well. Okay, so obviously we're looking underneath the car now at the moment. This is where this is the steering box here, okay? So it's actually attached to the front beam, the top part of the front beam here. It's basically sort of a U-bracket, if you know what I mean. So it's fairly straightforward to remove in that respect. And then you have a pinch bolt that goes through here and holds the lever arm onto the steering box itself. Now, the steering box I got doesn't actually have a new lever arm with it. So rather than trying to break the ball joints down there, I'm actually going to leave that in situ, and I'm going to just take out the pinch bolt and take it off in situ, and then we can take out those two bolts after we've disconnected the steering shaft. So hopefully it'll be pretty straightforward. We'll find out. Straight away I'm just looking at the amount of play there is in that. That's definitely not right. Looks like you could talk that into coming off. I'd actually said that this car was dangerous to drive as it was, and I don't think I was wrong on that one. So I'm going to steer the car the other way around, and I'm going to take that pinch bolt out. I'm hoping I'll get it with my impact gun. If not, I'm going to have to spanner it out. But sure, look, that's not the end of the world. We should easily be able to get that with the impact gun. Okay, so let's do that. Sorry about the noise in the yard, folks. It is actually a working yard, so. Okay, so that's that bolt out. Now, hopefully, that'll just pull off, and pretty much does. Just get something to lever it down the rest of the way, but it's most of the way, so that's going to work all right for us. Now, there's two more bolts we need to undo, but first we have to disconnect the steering shaft, so we'll do that next. Okay, so looking at the top here, you can see that there is a pinch bolt down there, okay? So the pinch bolt is holding the entire coupling onto the steering shaft in the steering box, okay? So what we'll do is we'll actually just undo that now, and hopefully we'll be able to, just when we have the steering box disconnected, just pull that out, because if I don't have to disconnect that, there's no point in disconnecting it if I don't have to. I'm just looking at one of the jam nuts on the track rod end is loose here as well. I'll tighten that up while I'm at it. And obviously the steering geometry is probably going to need to be checked on this car as a matter of course. God knows when the hell that's been done. Okay, so that's the steering coupling out. I decided to take this off because it just makes life easier. Rather than trying to take that out, we can tap it off when it's out of the car and put it onto the new steering box. But for the moment anyway, like, that steering box has had it. I mean, I can feel the graunchiness of the gears inside there. So the last thing to do is to unclamp it from the beam, and then we should be able to remove it. By the way, folks, my Beetle is a 1303. And I can tell you now that if you're doing this job on a 1303, it is an absolute nightmare. And because of the fact that the access is terrible for it, and there's no front beam, it's not clamped on, it's bolted to the inner wing, and you can't get out the fuel tank to get access to it or any of that. So, yep. We got a live one, folks. He's just been evicted. Alright. To be honest with you, working on a car like this, you wouldn't want to be afraid of spiders. Now, let's get the steering box out. I think I can get it out from the top. I'm going to have a look. One banjaxed steering box, folks. Bloody hell. Okay, right, so now we'll have a look at the new one. Before we get the new one out, I just want to tap the coupling off this. So this should literally just tap off. Nearly there now. There we go. Okay, so this is going to be fitted to the new steering box, and basically we have a new one of these. There we go. So we need to just install this into the car then and get everything set up. I think that polyurethane coupling is a vain attempt to try and address a problem that the steering box was causing. So that feels much better now. So let's get it reinstalled in the car. I'm inclined to attach the steering box is just literally sitting on the beam there now, so I just dropped it in. But I'm inclined to attach the steering column to the steering box before I clamp it to the beam, so that we know we kind of have it in the right position. So let's see. So there was a bolt, a washer, and on the other side is a washer and a nut. Make sure not to lose the spacer. Okay, so what I want to do now is I want to turn the steering column so that it's in between its travel, basically. The other thing I need to do is I want to just bring this across here so that the column is coming out the centre of the flange. So right, so that's full left lock now, right? So what I want to do now is I'm going to turn it full right lock, and I'm going to find out how many turns that is. So that's half one, half two, half three. Okay, so 3 turns lock to lock. So we need to go was 1.5 back. Okay, so half, one, half. All right. Now half one, 1.5 brings us so that the nut on the pinch bolt is facing up. Okay. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm now going to bolt the steering box in at that. Okay. I'm just going to check and make sure that. What I want to do now is I want to center up the wheels. I want to center up the steering wheel. I think the steering wheel could be upside down now, so that means that I have to take that off and turn it 180 degrees, but not a major issue. The spanner up and everything is back in the car. Okay, so the positioning of the steering box on the beam is pretty much bang on there now, right? So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put the bolts, the U-bracket that holds the steering box onto the beam back into position, and then we can put our pivot arm in. Okay, so here's the U-bracket that actually holds the steering box onto the beam, and I just gave the threads of the bolt a little bit of a clean there. I didn't go too mad on them. I mean, you don't need to be surgically clean, just clean enough to go back in. So we're going to reinstall these, and then the final thing to do then is to put the pivot arm back on and reinstall the fuel tank after I've checked everything. And I haven't forgotten about the locking the jam nut on the track rod as well. Obviously that needs to be checked, and I'll check all of them in the process because, yeah, you can't be leaving it like that. Send those ugga duggas. That, folks, is going nowhere. All right. So the last thing we need to do now is we need to put the pivot arm back on. Okay, so inside the pivot arm there is a set of splines on one side, and then you've got the pinch bolt on the other side. So you need to kind of just move it around until the splines go back in. And then what we'll do is we'll check our alignment and everything then. I'd say the tracking in this car is a mile out. There we go. It's starting to go up now, so we'll just give it a tap home. Sounds like the weather's really turned out there now. Alright, so that's that. And final thing to do is I'm going to just give that pinch bolt a little tidy up, and I'm going to put it back in. And then hopefully that's the job done. No, we do not want that coming loose. Alright, so the pinch bolt is going to stop that from coming off in the first instance, okay? And the other thing is there's splines in there, so either way it can't go anywhere now. So we're pretty good at that. So let's take stock of the situation. Okay, so I've snugged up all the bolts, I've rechecked everything, and that is a hell of a lot better. Okay, now there's still a little bit of play there, so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to adjust a little bit of that out. You need a little bit of play, but you don't want too much either for that matter. So what that involves is basically, if you have a look down here, what we need to do is we need to undo that lock nut, and we need to just wind the screw in. I'm thinking probably a quarter turn, just until there's a hint of play there, but not too much, okay? And once we've got that right, then I'll be happy enough to kind of put everything back together again, and yeah, the job will be hopefully a good one, and then we'll take it out for a spin. Okay, I can tell you now that the play is so much better in this. So there's obviously going to be a little bit, but I mean that's because it's a steering box and not a steering rack. You always get a little bit, but to be honest with you, that doesn't translate onto the road. By the time you're driving it, you won't feel that. Anyway, the next thing we need to do is we need to center up the steering box so it's in the middle of its travel, and based on that position we need to lengthen or shorten the track rods so that the tracking is, so that the wheels are straight at that. Because right now the way it is if you turn hard left, you've got hardly any lock, and you've loads on hard right, and that's not really any good. So let's get that sorted out. Okay, so I have the steering box roughly centered there, and you can see that on that side the wheel is turned slightly to the right, and it's turned seriously to the right on this side. Okay, so what we need to do is we need to center them up, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to loosen the jam nuts on the track rods. I haven't actually tightened the one that was loose yet. I'm not forgetting about it, but we're going to shorten the track rod on this side, and we're going to lengthen it on the other side, and that will get the steering roughly right. But I will obviously be saying to the owner of the car that he needs to go and get the tracking done, because yeah, it's going to be a mile out. I mean, I'm only going to be doing it by eye, so that's not really ideal. So let's get in at those track rods. They're accessible under the fuel tank as well, so it's kind of you can see them there. See the red yoke. So basically all I'm going to do is I'm going to loosen the jam nut, and I'm going to rotate the actual red rod until the wheel is roughly centered, and do the same on the other side. Okay, I think it's as good as we're going to get it by eye, to be honest with you. I don't think I'm going to be able to get it any better than that. So all the jam nuts are done up on the track rods, the steering box, all of the nuts are tight on that, and everything is bolted in properly. The last thing to do really now is just to put the fuel tank back in, and then we can get it out and take it for a drive and see how it goes. Let's do this. The seatbelt doesn't work. We die like men. Now, God, the seat's uncomfortable. Right, let's make sure the brakes are working first. Yes. To say this is lowered is an understatement. It's going to be interesting getting this out on the open road. It's idling a bit high anyway. I'd say that might come down now when it's heated up properly, but it should be fairly warm at this stage. It is all over the bloody place. Jesus Christ. Oh, we can't drive it like that. I've got a fright there, to be honest with you. Right, let's see if I can... It's literally like the wheels are not connected to the steering wheel. Steering here, there's something dangerously wrong somewhere. I need to nurse it back to the shed and have a look and see what's going on. Feels like it's got square wheels. Do is actually to check the tires. Maybe they're that low. Well, that wasn't so good. I was kind of expecting it to run on there, actually, funnily enough. I don't know I don't know why, but it didn't anyway. Right, that was terrifying. So yeah, let's investigate a bit further. It goes without saying, I should have checked the tyre pressures before I left. I didn't, and I'm just checking them now. The noise you hear in the background is my little mini compressor. It's the two front ones were slightly overinflated, if anything. They should be 18 on the front and 28 on the back. So I've set the front ones correctly. The back right one was down about 8 psi, and the back left one was flat. I didn't know that, but you wouldn't see it. I mean, it didn't actually look flat, to be honest with you, but, well, now on closer inspection, it definitely looks a bit flatter. But anyway, we'll get that inflated and take it out for another spin, and hopefully the car won't frighten the Jesus out of me this time. So, because I don't need that again. I literally felt like it was a struggle to keep the car on the road at all. Okay, so the compressor is pressurized now, so let's get that done. Right, can't say I'm not a little bit nervous this time, but let's give it a shot. It can't be any worse. After pulling up at the driveway here now. Yep. What are the odds? A bloody tractor. Well, that might be an excuse to keep it going slow, but I'm certainly not going to be overtaken, that's for sure. Doing 30 miles an hour. Let's keep going. Bloody tractors. Beetle engines are nice torquey little things actually. They don't have a huge amount of horsepower, but they nearly drive like a diesel. You know, you can leave them revving low and they're happy enough. And yet they seem to be happy enough revving as well. Oh, for the love of Jesus. He's turning off. Okay, it's motoring along pretty well now. Exactly what I'd call a finely tuned precision machine as far as handling is concerned, but it handles. You know, I don't feel like I'm going to be killed at any second in it. Turning in a filling station here. I'm not putting petrol in it. Right, no tractors, thanks be to Jesus. Forgot what gear I was in. It's a lovely engine, I have to say, it really is. Sun visors, is it? Ah, Jesus, no, nothing like that. No mod cons. Makes a great noise, I have to say. Yeah, you just pull out there, that's grand. Don't you worry, you're a little ahead about what might be coming. Okay, so we're in the I'm in the passenger seat now. Under strict instructions not to show the driver, so what do you reckon? Is it any better?
Definitely.
Brilliant. As I said, it's definitely wayward, but look, it's I think that's as much down to the fact that it's not centering properly because the tracking is so far out. I really had to eyeball it. So okay, so I think I've gone as far as I can anyway today. My kind of remit today was to change the steering box, and I changed the steering box. So I think at this point in time now what we need to do is we need to look at getting the tracking done. So I'm going to leave the owner of the car to do that, and hopefully that will make a big difference. So yeah, aside from that, I think, to be honest with you, a lot of the waywardness in the car is actually to do with other suspension components that are also worn. And you know, the body is not exactly holding together all that well either, so there's a lot of factors to consider, the steering only being one of them, you know. So I mean, how far can I go in the space of a day? Like, you know, in actual fact, 2 hours. So yeah, look, I'm going to leave it there, folks. So yeah, thanks very much for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe, and I shall talk to you in a future video. Future videos are going to involve this. I'm really enjoying this project, I have to say, folks, you know, working on this MG. It's coming together nicely. So we'll pick this up hopefully next weekend, and I'll get a bit done. So that engine block is coming out, and I'm going to get the gearbox out as well. So a bit to do, but it means then that at least the engine bay is fairly well cleared out.